what we're seeing now is almost single attacks against ships. I think they're finding difficulty in targeting. They're also, I suspect, finding it difficult to stay concealed until they can fire.
The continued fallout from the tensions in the Middle East, and a tanker with links to the UK was on fire for several hours in the Gulf of Aden earlier today, after being hit by a missile fired by the Houthi rebels. The Iran-backed movement, based in Yemen, of course, said that it had targeted the Marlin Loanda on Friday in response to what it described as American-British aggression. Well, the UK Defence Secretary Grant Shapps has called the attack intolerable and illegal. Let's speak to Chris Parry now, who is former Royal Navy Rear Admiral. He's also served as a Director General at the Ministry of Defence and as a NATO commander himself. Chris, hello, good evening.
Good evening, Daryl.
Just a series, just the latest really in a series of attacks, this, isn't it, in the Red Sea, that just do not seem to be letting up.
Well, yeah, they're getting a bit sporadic, though. If you remember, they started with a big wave of drones and anti-ship ballistic missiles and anti-ship cruise missiles. And since they've been attacked and quite a lot of their systems have been destroyed, what we're seeing now is almost single attacks against ships. I think they're finding difficulty in targeting. They're also, I suspect, finding it difficult to stay concealed until they can fire.
Oh, I think we lost. Sorry, I think we lost Chris there for a moment. Did we lose you there, Chris, for a moment?
Oh, maybe, but I'm still here.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so we're seeing real sporadic attacks at the moment, and I think that reflects the lack of targeting and also the vulnerability of quite a lot of their systems and missile launchers once they're out in the open.
Right. Do you see an end to it then anytime soon?
In some ways, forgive me, Daryl, but that's not the right question. It's whether it can be contained or not. At the moment, the warships in the Red Sea are pretty much coping with these things. The ship that was hit earlier today was sailing in isolation. I don't think it had passed its particulars to the warships that were on patrol there. So if you go outside the protective envelope, then you're always going to be vulnerable. But by and large, as long as the warships can cope with the attacks, and I think these attacks remain sporadic, then I think it can be contained. And I think as we go forward, we'll see more and more ships, I think, heading up and down the Red Sea in convoy, being protected by the warships. And that's very much what we did in the 1980s when we had a tanker war in the Gulf. In Iran was pretty hostile then.
So the strategy really, I suppose, is to wait this out, to let it peter out.
Yeah, exactly. I think, if the Houthis sort of increase the intensity of attacks, then I think the intensity of attacks on them is going to increase. So far, the United Kingdom, United States and their allies have been pretty proportionate and restrained. I think if you saw increased attacks, you'll see a commensurate increase in attacks on the Houthis. And of course, they've got a position to maintain within Yemen, and their credibility has to be maintained against other factions. And of course, the government itself in Yemen, everybody says, oh, actually, UK and US are attacking Yemen. They're not. They're attacking this group that actually dominates probably about a third of Yemen and no more.
This, I mean, the tension in the Middle East, but also, of course, aggression from Russia has led this week to debate about the size of our army. Chris, I'm keen to get your take on that as somebody who's, who spent their life really in close proximity to it as a former Royal Navy Rear Admiral. Do you share the concern about the size of the army?
I share concerns about the capability of our armed forces generally. It's not just the army. In fact, right now, the one service we shouldn't be worrying about too much is the army. We're a maritime-based country. We depend on trade, we depend on the sea and things like that. There are other countries like Poland, Germany, who are far more invested, if you like, in land warfare because they're actually on the continent. So is France. We do best now, obviously, to expend a bit more on defence because we're seeing real serious threats from Russia, China, Iran and North Korea at the moment acting in concert against our interests around the world. And the United States can't do it all on its own. So right now, yes, we do need to invest in our armed forces and defence. During the Cold War, we spent 5.2% of our GDP on defence, and now we're spending barely more than 2%.
Okay.